Hello everyone, welcome to the Lung Leng Show. Today I'm presenting one special guest again, and he is Dr. Visier Sanyü. And he's from Khonoma village. However, he has lived his life teaching and working out of India. So he has spent most of his life in Australia, and he is very Naga. However, he has that Australian trait. So I'm very curious to understand and learn more about life and culture. You know, I have known you for quite a long time and know you as someone who is very deep in what you think. And that makes me really curious. How did you start your life? You said you were from Khonoma village.
That's right.
And I, as someone whom I know you more as from the Australian angle side. So how did that start? I mean, before we jump into why you were there in Australia for, I want to know, how did you start your life as a small boy in a village?
Well, my childhood was very sad, very exciting, and dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Why do you say so?
Well, when I was about 6, I think, I joined Morung. I performed the Sekringi. We were animists. So I was doing the headhunting rituals, becoming a man, and performed the pusa, literally purification of the body. And then I went to school for maybe a month or 2, and then our village was burned by the army. So we left the village and lived in the jungle for 3 years. And that experience in the jungle shaped the whole philosophy, the whole outlook of my life. So everything I do and everything I think goes back to that experience as a little boy living in a jungle. And so it's a long story. So everybody knows my age group. They all went to jungle. They starved in the jungle and hunting, fishing in streams. So that's a long story.
Right, I know. I mean, if you don't mind, how old are you at this current
My age keeps changing. Recently, I found a diary of my brother. And he said I was born in 1949, so that'll make me 74.
Wow.
But because we were in the jungle, no record, so I entered my birthday as 1953, which was about 4 years younger than my real age, because by the time I went to school, I was already 9, when we came back from the jungle.
Okay, and so, that was, your school was in somewhere?
B school, yes.
Yeah, in Khonoma, right?
First I went to Khonoma, then I came to Kohima to the B school, Baptist English school,
Oh, I see. Wow. I mean, school was already there then, those days, right?
The school has started in 1959, I think, or something like that.
Oh, interesting. Now, since you did your schooling here in Kohima, and from then on, what did you do? Like, I want to know, what did you do later on that you found yourself a way to go abroad and have that life, for your studies and your work?
Yeah, before I went abroad, I had a few interesting experience. I went to Sainik school, then I went to a Catholic school. I finished my matric in Shillong, but I went to school, Sainik school in Bhubaneswar. So that opens a new chapter. When I was finishing my school, I saw a show by the Initiatives of Change, which in those days they call it MRA, called Anything to Declare. And instantly it challenges me because it talks about peace and reconciliation and about a new world and that kind of thing, you see. So I got to know them, and through the introduction to that group, it broadened my worldview, and I started traveling at a very young age. In fact, as soon as I finished my college, I joined a show called Song of Asia. And we traveled to Southeast Asia, we traveled all over Europe. I crossed the Arctic Circle, and I have a certificate to say that I am the first Naga to cross the Arctic Circle.
Wow. And that was in the 80s or 70s?
No, 75.
75.
Yeah, before you were born.
I mean, that was before I was born. I mean, you had really circled around the world before I was born. So it's great, and it's an honor to be in your presence. Yeah. But what really makes me wonder is in those times, where people hardly get education, what prompted you and what facilitated you to have that exposure? You said in Bhubaneswar, and you said you were just traveling around the world. I mean, people cannot even imagine coming to Kohima those days.
Yes.
That's what I can imagine. What facilitated you to venture,
like most kids, the world fascinated me. Mm-hmm. And I was thirst for knowledge. Mm-hmm. I want to know more. Mm-hmm. And stories I hear excites me. And I get deep into stories. Mm-hmm. So I was naturally wanting to go overseas to explore the world. Mm-hmm. But as you know, in those days, the Nagas don't get passport easily. Okay. So we had to go through so many processes in order to get a 3-month passport, and then extend every year and a temporary passport. And eventually, during the emergency, it was cancelled. So I came back from London. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you did your schooling in India?
Yes.
And then from your university?
Yes, I went to NEHU. Okay. And I did my master's and PhD, and immediately I got a job in the Kohima College. Okay. And when Nagaland University came, I became the inaugural head of Department of History and Archaeology. Mm-hmm. So we started the university because we joined NEHU before Nagaland University came into being. Mm-hmm. So we were, you might say, pioneers of Nagaland University. Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so that's teaching is one of your professions now.
Yes, right. That's
and I mean, will I be right to say you are now retired from teaching?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's say you taught in Kohima.
Yes.
And after that, where was your life heading to?
Yes, when I was in Nagaland University, we went through a very difficult period of fratricide. Mm-hmm. And every day someone was killed. Yeah. And Nagaland University got into the controversy. And I was the president of the University Teachers Association. Okay. So I used to get threatening phone calls, so-called from underground. Oh, I see. So life was unpleasant in the 90s. So I decided to take a year leave in 1996 to go to Australia as a visiting academic. And then 1 year turned out to be 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah. Before that, I've been to Australia when I was a student. But altogether, I must have spent about 22 years in Australia. Mm-hmm. It's the longest place I've stayed in. I mean, it's the one place I've stayed longest. Mm-hmm. I've always moving around and a bit of a peripatetic. Mm-hmm. But Australia was home for many years. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we jump into that Australian experience, I also want to know, were your parents educated?
No. My mother was totally illiterate. My mother never wore shoes. She never saw a train. She never went to Dimapur. But when we were in the jungle, she saw an aeroplane, the Indian Air Force flying across the mountain. So that was... And she didn't travel much further than the Zhejiang country when we were in the underground. So she was a village woman, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, looking at you, the way you think, the way you have really contacted with the outside world, and the way you speak, it's not a typical Naga that we see every day for a 70-plus years old man. That really makes me look back about your history and your background. But you seem to be like any ordinary Naga who has lived that same experience of, in the midst of conflict, under the care of parents, uneducated or illiterate parents. But you seem to have picked up very well. I cannot imagine having to go through that very difficult moment and having to have that education at the same time and having to grow this far, having to have come this far. Yeah.
It's difficult to explain, but sometimes life is a mystery, and sometimes it's fate. So when I was in science school, I got very interested in geography and history.
Okay.
So I used to look at the map, and we had an English teacher, and he used to teach us about South America and Australia. I said, one day I'm going to South America, I'm going to Australia. So I told my teacher, said, I want to go to Australia. That was 14, I was, or 15.
Okay.
And he gave me a list of pen pals to write. So I used to write to girls in Australia for about 5-6 years, exchange letters and thinking that one day I'll go to Australia, one day I'll go to America, and that kind of thing. So I had a lot of imagination and constantly exploring and also fascinated by history and why that happened. Oh my God, long time ago this thing happened, that kind of thing. So I was a curious child.
And then you landed in Australia. Now you joined as an academic there. What did you experience? I mean, in terms of a Naga living in Australia. When they see you, what kind of impression do you think they get, like as a foreigner?
Well,
you can speak close to the mic.
I had 4 jobs. I worked in 2 universities in Australia. First, I went in as a visiting academic for a contract of 1 year. And when they extended my contract, I decided to give up and go for study. So they were very surprised and very annoyed, the head of the department, because you don't give up a university job. So I went to study theology.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
in the Melbourne University in those days. Okay. I think they call it now University of Divinity, but it was part of Melbourne University. And I went to study theology not because I wanted to become a pastor nor a theologian, but I was very curious about theology. Okay. And I want to decode the mystic of theology because this theologian come and talk big things that I cannot understand and heaven and hell or something, it's totally perplexing. And so I said, look, the best thing is to learn yourself. So I enrolled in for a Bachelor of Theology, which is a 4-year course. Okay. But I took 7 years because I was working part-time. So that really expanded my thinking into another world, very different from history and geography and anthropology, which are my subjects, which are my interest. So I read quite a bit of anthropology out of interest, geography because I want to see the world. But history was my subject. Okay, so having studied theology, I got a job with the National Council of Churches as the refugee officer for the National Council of Churches. Then again, another opportunity came for the university. So I joined another university, Monash University, in Monash Asia Study, which means you can study any part of Asia. So South Asia is a very specialized version. So I was teaching there, also doing research for some time. And my last job was with World Vision. Okay. So I ended up with World Vision. And then from there, I left the job to come back here. But coming back to your question about how did it take, how do you feel? Number one, the world has never heard of Nagaland outside Nagaland and Naga areas. They have never heard of, an average man have never heard of Nagas. So the curious thing is they'll say, where are you from? And I normally say I'm from Nagaland. And then they say, what? Where? And that's how the conversation starts. But I learned this one in when I was traveling in Europe, when I was a younger man. They used to ask that question, and if I say I'm from India, but they'll say immediately, but you don't look like Indian. What, you're not Indian? I have an Indian friend, he doesn't look like you. So to erase the confusion, to make it simpler, I just say Nagaland. And then I started telling the story of the Nagas. That's how my interest in Naga history started.
Okay.
So I was telling them, and they would listen. I stayed with families when I was traveling. So Germany, France, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, England, Scotland, Wales. I was staying families, normal families.
Okay.
So sometimes the conversation was continued till morning because they're so curious. And in those days, no internet, no Google. So they'll go then open the encyclopedia because everyone has a one. And they say, oh my God, yes, there's a place called Nagaland. Oh, Nagas, headhunters. So that's how the curiosity started. And I developed a skill of telling Naga story. And then I read, then I would write to my brother and ask questions. What is that? What happened in that period, blah, blah, blah. So by the time I went to do my PhD in Nehu, I was very well versed.
Okay.
So my professor used to say, my guide, my supervisor, you're the first Naga who knows all about Naga history. And in fact, he was learning about Naga history from me. So I'm learning so much about Nagas.
Okay.
Anyway,
Now, you talk a lot about the history of the Nagas and Nagas as people. So, I mean, as a youngster, I'm myself lack a lot of knowledge about Nagas. Although we know that we have a history of confrontation with the government of India and a lot of military conflict. That's all most of the youngsters know. But the genesis of Nagas, like when we say Nagas, who are the Nagas for you? I mean, as someone who has been studying about this.
Well, the simple question is, you're a Naga because your parents are Nagas. Because your father and mothers are Nagas. Okay, that's the simple question. Strictly speaking, Naga is an imagined community. Now, when we say that, many people misunderstand that, oh, no, we are not imagined people, blah, blah. But academically, what they're saying is, people like Germany or for USA, there's nothing common in them. But they have imagined to be American, so they're American.
Yes.
They have thought it out, okay? So for India, it's a typical example of an imagined community. Okay, a Bengali from Bangladesh and Bengali from West Bengal, if they meet in Melbourne, there are no more Indians in Bangladesh, they're Bengalis. Okay. A Pakistani from Punjab and Pakistani from India,
Punjab from Pakistan.
Punjabi from Pakistan and Punjabi from India, they become brothers. They completely forget they're Pakistanis and Indians because Pakistani is a new thing. There was no Pakistani before 1947. So they have imagined that they are Indians. These Punjabis, Bengalis. Therefore, a Mizo, who is really a Chin, speaking the same language as Chin from Burma, they consider themselves as Indian and they go to Indian army, they fight for India, they join the Indian service and very proud to be Indians. But they have nothing common with Tamils or
Absolutely.
Telugus. So they have imagined to be Indians due to the historical process and a historical accident and history. So Nagas are a bit like that. So there were Nagas all the time, no doubt about that. The Nagas were mentioned by the Greek geographer Ptolemy, the 4th century AD, I think, and I'm forgetting the dates. Anyway, thousands of years ago, they said this area is Naga Logoy, the realm of the naked, the land of the naked, and pointed where the Nagas are now. So Nagas were there. The mythical Naga race was always in the Indian ancient books, in the texts. Naga Raja, there were Naga kingdoms. Sometimes they said Nagas were half snake, half human, divine, and so forth. So those are mythical Nagas. But the real Naga, flesh and blood, we are. Somebody called us Nagas, so we became Nagas. Now my theory is that when the Indian came up and saw these strange-looking people, they must have thought that, whoa, this must be the Nagas. We have heard about it, but we never met them. But the British made us Nagas. So before the British came, the Angamis, Maos, and Pumais, we never heard of Konyak or Pom. It didn't exist. Our world was only Tingime, Pumai, Mao, a little bit of Maranzemi, Angami. That was our world. But the British came and said, you are Naga, and these are also Nagas, and these are also Nagas, so we became Nagas. And that is nothing wrong. A peoplehood, formation of a peoplehood, formation of a nation is always a process like that. There were no German before. In history, there were no Italians. There were so many people. And then one day somebody came and said, we will all be German. Okay, we are German.
Okay. So now you say that it's more of an imagined community. Now that imagined itself is very subjective at this moment. But do you think, is there any objectivity in that, or is there any foundational fact that, okay, this group are called Nagas because there is something about the commonness about these people? Let's say.
Yes, of course. The foundation is very strong.
Although it's imagined, the foundation was real.
The community is, one might say, an imagined community in a sense that I was explaining about American and Indians. But the people, Naga people, has a very, very strong history, very, very strong foundation. Evidence is very clear. So we came obviously from Yunnan, China, from Mongolia, from whatever it is, migrated down south. There's people who speak very close to Angami in Yunnan. If you go there, counting the number, in Angami is they'll say tokwa for 9. And for me is fire, water is ze, sea is wood. So very similar language to speak. So we came from there. But as a process of forming a people or forming a nationhood, we have done better than most people. We have a very strong foundation.
Okay. So that means the present existing boundaries is just a made up.
Yeah, that is more or less exactly. That is an imaginary line.
Now that's the more imaginary one.
It is more an imaginary line because somebody made the line. It became a boundary. I mean,
that makes sense. I think in this 21st century world, nationalism comes within the boundary rather than the community now. When you look at it, since if you acquire Australian citizenship, you become an Australian more than Indian. So I think, but some people yearn for having that common nationalism as a people community together rather than the boundary.
Yes. That is absolutely. That's why the phrase Nagas without borders make much sense.
It does a lot.
Because whether you're in Burma or in India at the moment, you're still Naga. And that ethnicity and that cultural and DNA bound is much stronger than a boundary, imaginary boundary line.
Totally.
That is absolutely true.
Totally.
But in a few years' time, in our own lifetime, in your lifetime, all this will become irrelevant, because according to Harari, even the sapiens, the human being, will no longer exist. It'll be run by AI, which will be more like God than human. So in Angami, there's a song called Temyamo, Teromikemya. It's more like gods than human. So this internet revolution, the scientific revolution, which is going so fast, is going to be, in a few years' time, sovereignty will have no meanings. You can be anywhere and do anything. You can be anybody and anywhere. You can book your ticket to Mars, whether you're in America or a Naga. And very soon they'll be selling. Elon Musk will be selling his tickets. So we are heading for a very different world. So when we talk of this nationalism and factionalism and this group and that group, it'll become irrelevant.
Less important.
Less important, yes.
True. Now, the idea of Naga peoplehood is kind of like, that really gives me an insight that it's not just about imagination, although peoplehood are formed through imagination, and it remains as an imagination in many cases. However, there is also a historical fact about being a Naga.
Absolutely.
But what is your reaction to the parochialists who say that, there is this part of the Naga is more pure than this side of the Naga. There are narratives like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I understand.
I'm sure. But when you look at from an anthropological point of view, that becomes like a layman's argument, which holds no water.
That is a totally uneducated, illiterate view of human history or of history or of society. There are a few things that really marked the formation of present Nagas. So those things form the reality of the history and the formation of a people. So the first one would be the invasion of the Ahoms. Sukhapa came through the Naga hills. And then the Ahom mentioned that there were Nagas. The Nagas resisted. So we didn't have written records, but we learned from Buranji, from the British, from the Ahoms. So that was, 26, whatever, 13th century. Then the coming of the British in the 1832, when they walked into Naga hills, that changed everything. That changed everything because we were introduced to a wider world that we were not aware of. So we became part of the humanity or human society as a result of the invasion of the British. So that was very important. As a result of that, the missionaries came, they brought education. So the development of the society was taking a very fast pace. And after that, then we became, of course, most of us became part of the British Empire. But then before the British left, that's a few educated people were able to articulate our history through the Simon Commission Memorandum. So that leaves a very historical mark. True. And then the rest is, of course, plebiscite and declaration of independence and so forth. But those are the foundation of a formation of peoplehood. Now, these people who are sort of, let me put it very directly, those people, those are in Nagaland, called Nagaland State, and thinking they are somewhat kind of a Brahmin, Naga Brahmin, are just a nutcase. They absolutely don't understand the history of the Nagas. They have no anthropological or cultural understanding of the history. So because of the trouble, the war, of course, Nagaland state has to be created. It was created, the controversy, which I don't want to go into it.
Yeah.
But it became a reality. Then the people who are uneducated and didn't know the history of the movement, Naga movement, then developed a kind of an artificial, superficial superiority complex that, those who are living outside Nagaland are not real Nagas, kind of thing. And that's what you're referring to. Yeah. Now, that is... that happens everywhere.
I agree.
Yeah, and there is always this conflict everywhere. But because people are not educated, because they have not learned the history, and therefore they have not learned the future.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you cannot imagine the future without knowing the history.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, right. Yes, yeah.
So now, as a people, I mean, we are all part of the so-called Indian nation. Yeah. Indian nation. Not politically, however, as a people, in terms of the development of the Naga peoplehood, where do you think are we heading to as a people? Like you said, this categorization of people as one community and the other community, Nagas, Mizos, may become less important in the future because of the revolution of internet and AI and all these technologies that's coming towards us. Where are we heading to?
Yeah, this is the dichotomy, or this is the perplexing situation. Number one is people are more and more becoming of their ethnic background. Okay, they want to preserve and promote their ethnicity all over the world, on one hand. Scottish, Irish, they want to be, and the Nagas and Mizos and Punjabis, Tamils. They want to ascertain their position as an ethnic group. So that is growing everywhere. Yeah. On the other hand, nationalism is becoming meaningless, and it will become less important, irrelevant, because of this fast changing AI and algorithm and whatnot. So we are living in a world that 50 years ago people could not imagine. 50 years ago. I was in Holland, I think, for nearly 50 years ago or 45 years ago in Philip Company. And they were telling us that one day you can see your friends from your phone. I said, my God, how can that be? And they said you can carry your phone. So how the cable will be very long, that kind of thing. But they were already researching what the telephone will become, the Philip company. Okay. So, and it became like that. And sometimes predictions are wrong. Like in 1940s, the scientists said by 2000, that is 60 years from 1940, people will be traveling to Mars and stars. It never happened. But they have absolutely no idea about internet. They didn't imagine that internet would come. But look at this. What a world.
I know.
It's absolutely frightening because they're saying now that we will not need a doctor very soon because AI will tell you everything about your sickness. It'll tell you what you eat, where you sleep, how long you sleep, how you exercise. It'll tell you what disease you have and your sickness. Even Facebook will be able to tell you your illness. And then when you operate, a robot will operate. So then a doctor will become irrelevant. Anyway, this is a very strange, strange topic we're talking.
But I think it's worth. It's quite intriguing when you look at what's happening around us.
Yeah. So in that sense, Nagas become a part of that.
Absolutely.
So we become part of the humanity, and we become part of the human problems. So anything that is happening is going to affect us. The war in Israel, the war in Ukraine is going to affect us because we have suddenly become a global family without us knowing it.
True.
We're not aware, but it is.
True. True. Okay, so now as a person who has experienced, a lot of culture and a lot of people, different people from different nationalities, and who has worked in different, settings. Now, as a 20 plus years old man, now what do you look forward to in your life, and what is the thing that you dream about?
Difficult questions. One desire, one dream is that Nagas will become united.
Across borders.
Across borders. And that we'll be able to live as a family or as a nation or as a people in one geographical boundary. That's a very big dream. Even if that is difficult, and it is going to be difficult, because normally changing of a boundary takes hell of a time. Normally, it's about war, it's about a constitutional change, and it's not easy. So even if the boundary stays, it is possible that you can develop a peoplehood with the boundary still there, you see. So, and that is more happening. It is more and more becoming like that. I mean, many Nagas are going to live overseas. They are not going to be in Burma or in India. They're not going to be in Manipur or in Nagaland. But they'll still be Nagas. And they'll form a community of Nagas. They are doing in Australia and America. They're very small, but they are. And this is what exactly the Chinese have done, exactly the Chinese have done, the Vietnamese have done, and they're all over the world, but they're Vietnamese, they're Chinese. And Indians are doing it. They're all over the world now.
True. So if I have to rephrase that, it's more of like an emotional integration of people having the same roots, like say as a Naga.
Foundationally, or the foundation is an emotional thing. But then this emotional thing develop into a spiritual thing. It goes deeper. So then you become more Naga, not just emotionally or culturally, but there is something deeper, which I can't put into words. A very good example are the Jews. So everybody wants to quote them and give examples. So
Okay, so let's say a final or concluding questions would be, when you observe the youngsters, the Nagas as youngsters, and now you as an elder, what is your impression, and what are the things you would like to address? Or do you see any predicaments among the Naga youngsters? Youngsters as in like the younger generation.
There are always two ways of looking at it. One is the young generations are much more educated than ours. They're much more equipped. They go to much better schools. They have much better facilities. Therefore, their minds are very developed, on one hand. The other hand is they are not committed as our generations, or they are not so much aware of who they are. They are totally, what is the right word? They have not been educated in their own history. So they're totally unaware of who they are. and how they became like this and where they are going. So sometimes it's very shocking because even the simplest thing they do not know. So I was traveling in a taxi with a PhD student going to Shillong, and she had absolutely no idea who is who. Every Naga I mentioned, she had not heard of it. So I said, have you ever heard of a man called Piso? And she smiled, yes. So the only historical figure among the Nagas is she heard about Piso. So to that extent, and totally unaware of the history. So there are many, many people like that. So that will be a sort of a lost generation.
Now, when the youngsters are not educated enough on our roots, on where we come from, and what kind of people we are, and I mean how we become as a people. I mean, what are as a historian, what are the consequences when people don't know enough about their roots and then the peoplehood that they are? Like the likely consequences.
Well, many people have disappeared. Many tribes or nations have merged with the other bigger group. So they no longer exist, or they don't longer call themselves with that group. So there is a possibility that if this Naga family continue to fight and dismantle, some of them will call themselves Arunachalis, and some of them will call themselves something else, and some of them will call, okay, we are Burmese, we speak Burmese, we speak so forth. So then possibility of disappearing is also there, but most unlikely, because it is a very, it's fairly a big group. When you talk about an indigenous group or an ethnic group or a small nation, 4 million is a lot of people. I mean, it's not 1 billion, but it's hard to disappear.
It's half the size of Germany, let's say. Well, I mean, any other country. In Europe, you will find a lot of countries with 4 million population.
There are small countries like
So it's quite a fairly good amount of people, like you said.
I mean, there are countries with 500,000 people and few lakhs. Solomon Islands and Niue and East Timor and all these people. Few lakhs.
Now that you're back to Nagaland, you have come back here for good now.
Yes.
So now, what are you interested in? Like, what is your plan here?
Well, I started a garden called Healing Garden, and I thought about it before I came.
Okay.
Because when I was thinking of coming back, the question was, what will I do? I mean, I'll be like Rip Van Winkle after 20 years coming back to Nagaland. So for about 3 years, I thought about it. And then I read something addressing to the Asians and said, if you are thinking of going back home to your native country, you must be clear with 3 things. You must be able to admit your mistake and able to forgive and have a clear goal as why you're going back. The other 2 are irrelevant. I mean, you can forgive what is there. But to have a clear vision, a clear goal as what to do is difficult. So after 3 years, I said, well, I have a land in Mazipema. I'll start a garden. I'll call it Healing Garden. And I'll give a safe space for people to come together to meet and enjoy nature. And it'll sort of protect the nature and connects with the natural world. So those are the philosophy I started. And now 8 years since I came back home, I think. And it has become bigger than Bangalore. Oh. In other words, it's much more than I expected. Every week people come. Every month, teachers, church groups, students, they come for workshop and for training. And they enjoy it. And basically there's nothing, flowers, a tree house and jungle. But there's something that speaks to our soul in nature. The trees and the flowers and the forest touches our souls. So that is what I came for, and that is my vision, is to develop this garden into a unique garden that people can really enjoy. So I read something when I was coming back. Someone said, if you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. So I have everything I need now. And my dream or my vision is to develop this garden into a real garden.
Okay.
Yeah, it is beginning. Yeah, I mean, I have lots of fruit trees and lots of flowers, and I keep some animals. But much can be done. Much can be improved.
I look forward to visiting your garden.
You must welcome. You must come and see. Oh my God! Yeah.
Wonderful. I really appreciate for such initiatives and thinking differently from, unconventional dreams and thoughts that you have, visions that you have for our people, for the Nagas, as well as for human beings in general. So I really appreciate that you come here and share your thoughts.
I may add, all the Asians, or for that matter, Italian, Greeks, and all these people who come to Australia, it's like a winning lottery ticket. They never go back. They don't want to go back because their country is very different from Australia, and they're used to, and they get used to Australia. The facilities, the space, the beaches, and so forth. So when I said I'm thinking of going back, my friends thought I was crazy. And they always said, "Are you sure? You're not joking, you know?" I said, I'm certain. I don't want to get old here. I want to go back, you know. And that's how. And a very good example was my friend, Burmese friend, Momon Tong, lived in Australia for 40 years.
Wow.
And then he said, I want to go back to Burma and help my people. So he went to Rangoon, and he lasted 1 year. He came back. He said, "Oh, I can't live there anymore. It's too dirty. It's too corrupt. Oh, no, I can't live there anymore." So he came back. So my fear was, come here, and I'll go back. Then it'll be too much, you see. So I was determined that if I come, I have to stay. I still go back to Australia. Australia is home, in a sense. Yeah. And I love Australia. And I was there for 4 months last year. My son and daughters are there. So I love Australia, but I have made this my home.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's quite insightful and enriching, and you have opened up more space for us to give a thought.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's nice to talk to you.
It's nice talking to you too. Yeah, it's much better than I know. I expected it'll be great, but it's even much better than I expected.
Oh, thank you.
So we can have another round of conversation now on your experience here in Nagaland later in the next part.
Yes, next year maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. There are lots to talk about.
There are lots to talk about.
Lots about to discuss.
Yeah.
But in a short time like this, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, we can't do much.
Yeah.
But I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
I think people enjoy your talk.
Thank you so much.
You should become the next Karan Thapar.
That's a big compliment. Thank you so much. I'll aspire to become one like that. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.